life helped me become a better person?
I was reflecting right when I heard the question was that does like that gang banging lifestyle made me a better person? And then right away in my head was like, no, it made me an evil person. Like that's the reality. It made me an evil person.
I agree.
As time goes on, I was being desensitized. I remember slowly it started from shoplifting, then from shoplifting to like breaking into cars, then from breaking into cars like breaking into houses, and then slowly it started progressing to the point when it started becoming active, where the gang fights around the neighborhood, to the gun violence and everything. Like I didn't care anymore. Like slowly it's like, all right, like now like screw everybody. I don't even care, to the point where I remember it's so foul where like I constantly said that I became a young parent. I remember that I said I love my family, I love my daughters, but yet my gang was like priority by my action and behavior, to the point where I ended up involved in a gang shooting, many other shootings before that, but ended up involved in a gang shooting where I ended up having to serve 2 life sentences for it, and the person that was shot was another Cambodian woman in the hood that we knew. I started my time in 2005, but then the aha moment didn't even happen immediately. It was after I learned that I shot someone, and that person was a member in the community whom I knew, and that's when it really sunk in, like the lies that I was living. So that was when like I literally was in bed and just thinking about like, man, like that could have been my mom, that could have been my aunt.
I think my understanding of gangs is probably a little different. Like they first started off as like political movements in the first place, like for the community, right? Because I think like the communities they emerge out of usually poor, distress, right? Not a lot of resources there, broken families. So you got a bunch of like kids with no parents, right? Like where do you get any like guidance, right? How do you train them, educate them, make them capable of like doing things? So I feel like gangs was like the first organization, at least me growing up, that actually had some structure. So I think getting that training, as long as you don't lose sight of like what it's actually for, right? I think it's more than just like killing, robbing, doing all the other like crazy, ridiculous stuff.
For me, it was definitely a brotherhood. I came from a broken home. My crew was my family. I've been hustling since I was 6, 7 years old. I learned how to survive. I learned how to make money as a kid. Then the bullshit happens. The betrayals, the fugazi shit, the bullshit missions that you get put on and stuff like that. And so it actually helped me. So when I got out of prison in 1999 and I started, a whole new life, everything I learned, the good, the bad, helped mold me who I am. You know what I'm saying? So again, I'm not proud of the dumb decisions I made, but I'm very glad because I learned a lot of stuff, some good, some bad, but it helped prepare me on how to be a better human. Like, for real. I feel like I understand people more. So what does it mean to me when I say be a better person? Honestly, to simplify, I'm doing almost everything opposite that I did when I was a kid, and I'm doing everything opposite that was done to me from like my parents, the people that I looked up to there. But being good is making the right decisions, not the easy decisions.
You guys all had valid points, but what you were talking about, what you learned from the streets, you're gonna learn that in everyday life.
I'm not sure.
Coming up and being successful without that life. I think that's a false way to look at it, but I strongly disagree with me being a gang member made me a better person. Well, my father started me on cocaine when I was 13 years old. I was a drug addict. I did drugs all the time. I got lines for doing the dishes. I grew up like that. And then I moved to Anaheim in California. And then I started running around with gangs. And all that did for me was turn me into a violent criminal. Of course you learn a few things here and there about how to act, how to carry yourself, what to look out for and what, not to do. But in the end, being a gang member, you're constantly creating victims. If you're serious about it, you're shooting people, you're stabbing people, you're selling drugs to communities where where parents are using drugs with their kids and their family and ruining families. So I just strongly disagree with anything about being a gang member is good. Being a young kid, you don't know the consequences of what using drugs is actually gonna do to you. And essentially it ruined my life. I wasted 35 years of my life because of drugs. For every bad thing that happened in my life, I blame my dad. You know, until I understood, that, I am responsible for my own actions. The only one that can change my life is me.
What if the story you're telling yourself isn't the whole story? We're all moving through life boxed inside an invisible, personal reality filter, a perception box. Your perception box shapes how you see the world and how you judge yourself and others, often without you even realizing it. So if something in this episode makes you a little uncomfortable, ask yourself, what am I reacting to? What story am I believing? And what might I be missing? Now let's get back to the video. I still carry guilt for things I did in the past.
Me growing up with the family I grew up in, I told myself I'd never be like my dad, and I was even worse. And when I was sentenced to a life sentence, I essentially left my daughter out there, and then a few years later, my daughter's mother died. There's several things I've done in my life that I have regret for, and I try now to do what I can to help people. The way I look at it is God's forgiven me, and every day I just try to be a better person, and I just ask God to help me be a better person. What it will take to fully forgive myself, I don't think that will ever happen. I think all I could do now is be there for her, and make sure that she knows that I love her.
My main guilt is bringing my son and my daughter into this world without a plan. Because of all the dumb decisions that I've made, it didn't just go back on me. Kids are suffering for it right now. All that guilt, I'm still fighting it today. Every day is a struggle. It's a daily battle.
I try to feel zero guilt though, like overall, zero. Besides survivor's guilt, but like guilt for like the pattern of decisions that I made like as a kid growing up. It's like the environment, and not that I'm like not taking responsibility, like not at all. In fact, like quite the opposite. But like if your parents is twisted and their parents is twisted, like mental illness, drug addiction, poverty, like, and then you happen to be born in those circumstances, then the people around you, those are influences, some good, some bad, but largely like still impoverished. Like you make choices that lead you to the life. And then it's only when you become like conscious of that, like aware of like, oh, I see how all this happened. Like it's not just me, you just born, it's like a whole system, like society. Like there's certain parts of society where like whole like generations, they only experience good things, like and privilege. So how is it these certain neighborhoods, it always goes left for them, right? And I think when I became aware of that, then it was on me, like, all right, now I have to like turn it around.
When I was younger, I was wild. I was just on a whole different stratosphere, and I made a lot of bad mistakes. I definitely hurt people, and I definitely hurt my family. Yeah. So there's two types of hurt, whether they're victims or it's the family, So I've got two different things that I try to wrestle with. The only thing is through training and evolution and maturity, I understand that there's circle of influence versus circle of control, which means there's certain things that we have no control over. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like today, I did dumb shit like 2 decades ago. You know what I mean? So at what point can I let that go? You know what I'm saying? But it's still overwhelming sometimes.
At what point do you like officially pay for all your sins? Like everybody. Like at some point, the debt's over, bro. Like you're doing all the good in the world, take care of your family, giving back to the community. Like why do you have to carry guilt the whole time?
I came home from the feds in 1999 and I still feel guilty. I still feel remorseful. I still feel shame for some of the shit that I did. And it's hard because when I wake up next to my family, that's one of the reasons why I feel guilty. Is like, I know it was so long ago, but time is relative. You know what I'm saying? Like, it feels like it was yesterday sometimes.
I've lost people I love to gang life.
I've been to 4 funerals, all dear friends of mine growing up. So yeah, I definitely strongly agree that I have lost people I love to this lifestyle. And from middle school to high school, been involved with that lifestyle where there's a gang war going on, and so it was on site. So there was a shooting back and forth, and a couple of my homies, 2 of them got caught slipping at one time, so that was like 2 deaths right away. So that was 2 funerals immediately within that span of 1 week.
I would say that yes, but not in the traditional sense of death. A very, very close friend of mine who's the founder of the TF organization, Paulie Zantz, he got caught in a federal RICO and a murder case, and he blew trial. So he's life plus 30. So again, he's still alive, but he's never coming home.
Yeah, Sean, you bring up a good point. I think when most people think about the life, they typically think about death. I feel like if you grow up, from the slums or whatever, the barrio, like you definitely lose people 13, 14 when you gotta choose a side. But I think more broadly, like the larger impacts is everyone gets locked up, like at some point. And then if you blow trial, you have cases already where you go to the feds, like the time is double, right? And so you're getting like 100 months, 200 months, double life. And so they're gone forever. And then for the individuals who don't end up getting locked up, but it's still in the neighborhood, like they get addicted to drugs or like they're stuck in poverty. And like you go back, like everybody I grew up with, terrible circumstances. When I look back on some of my friends, either they're still incarcerated or they're recently released and they have no jobs. And then I look at my own life and I'm wondering what is so different from what I did that led to these outcomes, and why don't they have the same thing? So that's what keeps me up at night, to be honest. There isn't too much that's fundamentally different about me than the people that I grew up with. Except I had my grandfather early on. He was really militant, came out the military, really was intense on academics. Like they just didn't have that one person in their life to give them that like opportunity or that like pathway, and they've never been able to recover.
Not minimizing when somebody's dead, but it's almost worse sometimes when you see them alive and they're locked down. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes they wish they were dead. You know what I mean? Because they know life like that in a cage. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard.
That's very interesting you say that, because as I was once a lifer, I spent 26 years in prison. At one point, I was never supposed to get out of prison. And here I am today, by the grace of God. All of us, I'm sure here, have been through or seen something or witnessed, some kind of tragedy, and we've all lost people through drugs, through gangs, through all that.
I felt more accepted by my gang than my own family.
Members of my family have been like a part of this whole like movement, and so they've always accepted it like it's a part of the culture. And so there wasn't really a distinction between like, oh, my family loves me, or like the gang or the bros love me. It was always like the same for me. And then like once you go through some real situations, some life or death situations, like getting money together, like those bonds are as strong as family like ever. So in my opinion, like everybody that I came up with and we survived that whole journey together, like them is actually my brothers.
My family, they pretty much, they just kicked me out on the street, and then the only people that took me in were them. And running the streets, and that's all that I had. And, they gave me love, of course, and they took me in, but they also turned me into a criminal, like they turned me into a criminal. And, you know what happens with that, but that's that false sense of love I was talking about. Yeah. I mean, I'm friends with a lot of them guys still, We're all different now, of course. We've all been through a lot of time in prison, but, it's a little bit different now. What I've realized is that, you could go on blaming everybody else for your problems, but in the end, until you take responsibility for your own life and realize that no matter where you come from, what you've been through, you know right from wrong.
I was pretty much the black sheep of the family. Not just me, my sisters too, who were all treated wrong. The only person that was good was my father. Now, when I joined the gang, I see it right through their lives because I was able to learn it from my family. But I just kept my mouth shut and went along with it to see if I could make the money. Because I learned, that's fast money. But as I was learning all that, I was like, oh, this is a lot worse than I thought it was with my family. I had to keep going, regardless of how my family was with me or regardless of how people in the street was with me. But the reason why I felt like a real black sheep was because out of everything that happened in my life, I've got it the worst. You guys want to keep treating me like how I am? What you guys are calling me? What do you think you are? I'm gonna beat what you guys think I am. And you know, I was being rebellious and stubborn. I should have had not let that beat me, but actually use that as a tool to do better. But now I'm using that as a tool to do better.
My parents was never at home, and my parents were, you know, like the war survivors. They were genocide survivors during the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia that was taking place, and that's the reason why we had to come over here as refugees. And I remember growing up, there was no talk, you know, with my parents going through the trauma of, you know, the war and everything, and they were always gone away from the house. So I felt abandoned. I felt like they didn't love me, and then I learned as an adult that they were always gone at the house because they were constantly going out to the parks in the early morning looking for recyclings. So I didn't know it at that time. In my head, it was like they just didn't care about me, you know? We grew up in a project where there are other gangs there. So like you have to like be able to, you know, form a gang or join a gang. And so I remember that, they accepted me right away. We accepted one another, and it was a thing. It was the thing to do, so it was normal. The gang that I grew up with, I mean, I'm talking about, it's like that family love and everything where I mean, we're still tight. They know that I don't hold the same belief. They know that. They know that if, you know, like if something happened and they need prayer, they call me, you know, they hit me up. But other than that, you know, like we don't hold the same beliefs, but we all grew up together and we know each other. So yeah, so I strongly agree that the gang accepted me because my parents didn't know how to, you know, like how to show love like that. So yeah, it fit right in, you know, with that gang lifestyle. I wasn't receiving the love at home. In fact, it was the opposite. I was getting punished at home because of the trouble that I was getting into. You know, my own parents, you know, don't have the skills or the education to, you know, be a good parents themselves. So they parent the way that they knew how. And that's when I realized that, no, my parents was a victim of their own trauma growing up. That's when, like, okay, like I want to do everything I can to like make amends with my parents and everyone that I wronged.
Without a doubt, my crew, my people, showed me way more love than my family ever did. Not even close. Like, I never had any type of, you know, father figure. My mother was a single mom with a girlfriend. You know what I mean? So she put my ass in a boys' home. So I definitely found community, love, and definitely, I don't want to say protection because it wasn't on some, as far as like, you know, I had guidance. You know what I mean? I understood how to move and how to handle certain situations. I was never taught that before.
Leaving the gang was harder than joining it.
Leaving the gang was harder?
Disagree. It was easy.
I left the gang when I was in prison. So, you know, like and I'm already a ranking member with a reputation. And so when I gave my life over to Christ in 2005, when I started my time, I was still 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You know, like I was still with the prison politics and the gang politics. And I had an encounter with God. It was a powerful encounter where like it transformed my life. Yeah, so I was like, I had some sleepless nights where like, man, Lord, like don't let me get stabbed the following morning and all that by my own people. But they honored the transformation. They were witnessing it. They seen that I was going to church, like being involved with Bible study and everything, and invited them to. And it was amazing where like they turned around and gave me full support. So I was very fortunate in that, you know.
So I feel like I never like got out of it. Basically, like, there are people who are like gang banging and who are active. Like they're living a whole nother world, right? And there's still people who like control the organization or control the family. They're not doing none of that wild shit. But they're still like setting up plays, still getting money with each other, like. And so like, when it comes to like stepping out and like people are gonna prevent you from like doing something different, like I never experienced that.
There's two ways to look at the question. You know, first is, our crew was not easy. They weren't just like, you know, there's some organizations that just can accept anybody. It wasn't easy to turn around and be part of the organization. So it was definitely easier in that sense to leave than it was to get accepted, you know what I mean, to be part of that officially be part of that organization.
Yeah.
The reason why I said somewhat agree, not 100% agree or what have you, is because I felt drawn. And I don't know why, but I feel like it's definitely a part of me. You know, it was the old part of me, but it's still a part of who I am and who I was.
I was gone for so long. My outlook on life to a lot of people who've never really lost their life to the system is different. You know, every day I walk out my front door, I'm happy. You know, I love going to work. I love being able to walk out my front door.
The evil that I was involved with, you know, like my conduct was very, you know, like horrendous, you know, like looking back at it. And so because of that, I don't want something like that to happen again. You know, not only like my own action and behavior, but I take pain when I read and see on the news, you know, other people harming others, especially, you know, like when they're involved with a gang and gun violence. Hurt people, you know, so in that sense, like, okay, like let's do all I can to bring healing to the community.
Is there a part of yourself that you have a hard time accepting? Hit the link below for perception box questions that invite you to zoom out, soften up, and see things a little bit differently.
Yeah. That's how they were going to get their viral moment. They were going to get us all to hug each other. So,